The lobby was silent until the sound of leather shoes echoed on the marble floor. A man in a simple gray hoodie stepped into the towering glass building, pausing beneath the golden letters, Aurelius Global. He had walked these halls for decades. Today, he was stopped at the door. "Sir, you don't belong here." The guard's voice was sharp, dismissive. What nobody realized, what nobody dared to imagine, was that this stranger owned more of this empire than anyone in that room upstairs. And in less than 2 weeks, the world would know it. The building was a monument to wealth. A 50-story fortress of steel and glass, with polished marble floors that reflected power like a mirror. Every person who walked in wore designer suits, carried briefcases, and flashed badges that cost careers to earn. But the man in the hoodie? He looked out of place. His name was Elijah Ward. To most of the world, he was a retired investor who had disappeared years ago after selling his stakes. What the board never knew was that Elijah still held the company's original charter and a silent ownership clause hidden inside it. But he didn't walk into Aurelius Global to brag. He walked in because something darker was happening inside those walls. Over the last few months, whispers had spread, charities being cut, pensions frozen, loyal employees laid off without warning. Aurelius Global, the company Elijah built from nothing, was rotting under new leadership. And at the center of it all? Cassandra Vale, the new interim CEO. Cold, brilliant, ruthless. She had clawed her way into power through a merger, and she ruled the company with polished cruelty. Elijah pressed the elevator button to the executive floor. Before the doors closed, 2 security guards stepped in front of him. Restricted access. Only board members beyond this point. "I'm here for that meeting." His voice was calm. "Do you have clearance?" He paused. "More than you know." The guards exchanged a look and laughed. One reached for his arm. "You're done here. Out." The humiliation stung not because they didn't recognize him, but because he had built the elevator they were guarding. And in that moment, Elijah knew this wasn't about recognition. It was about erasure. They wanted to erase his name, his legacy, his life's work. That night, Elijah didn't sleep. Instead, he walked the streets of Manhattan, remembering how far he'd come. He was the son of a janitor. The kid nobody believed in. The man who started with a garage business and turned it into a global empire. Every floor of Aurelius Global was built brick by brick on his sweat. And now, he was a ghost in his own house. The next morning, Elijah returned not to storm the gates, but to watch. He saw patterns. Executives leaving in silence. Employees whispering in corners. A charity office once buzzing with activity now shuttered, the sign ripped off. It wasn't just bad management. It was a takeover. That's when Elijah met Naomi Carter, a young financial analyst who stayed late nights, buried in spreadsheets. She caught him watching one evening. "You're Elijah Ward," she whispered, eyes wide. "Not anymore," he said. "But you built this company. And now they're burning it to the ground." Naomi had proof. Hidden in the numbers were irregular transfers, millions quietly funneled into offshore accounts tied to Cassandra's private network. She had tried to raise the alarm. HR told her to shut up. Her boss told her to be loyal. But she wasn't loyal to Cassandra. She was loyal to the dream Elijah built. Together, they began to collect evidence. Late nights in quiet rooms. Screenshots, audit trails, secret files copied onto encrypted drives. Every discovery led to another revelation. Cassandra wasn't just greedy, she was planning to sell Aurelius Global's core assets to her family's holding group. A move that would destroy thousands of jobs and transfer billions overnight. Naomi showed Elijah a grainy video, Cassandra in a closed-door meeting, smirking as she said, "Elijah Ward is finished. By the time he realizes what we've done, Aurelius will be ours. His legacy dies with him." Elijah leaned back, silent. But in his eyes, for the first time in years, burned the fire that once built an empire. "Then it's time to remind them," he said quietly, "who I really am." The next morning, headlines exploded. Former billionaire causes scene at Aurelius HQ. Disgruntled ex-founder trespasses corporate offices. Cassandra's PR team moved fast. A distorted CCTV clip of Elijah being escorted out by guards was leaked, making him look like a delusional old man. Social media mocked him. "He looks broke. If he was really a billionaire, why's he in a hoodie?" Even former allies stayed silent. For the first time, Naomi doubted. "Maybe we can't win this." Elijah looked at her. "Calm. Steady. That's what they're counting on." He knew Cassandra had just made her biggest mistake. For the next 7 nights, Elijah and Naomi worked in silence. They didn't storm boardrooms. They didn't make noise. They built their case in the shadows, brick by brick. In an empty corner office on the 28th floor, long forgotten after a department was gutted, they set up their base. Laptops. Flash drives. Old access cards Elijah still had from the founding days. Every night at 10 p.m., when the building emptied out and security made their last round, Naomi would swipe them in through the service entrance. Elijah moved through the corridors like someone who had memorized every tile. They traced financial transactions back 5 years. Offshore shell companies, disguised as consultancy groups, were bleeding Aurelius dry. Naomi pulled up files Cassandra thought she'd buried. Every number told a story, a betrayal measured in dollars. "She's not stealing money," Naomi muttered one night, her eyes locked on the screen. "She's stealing the soul of this company." Elijah nodded slowly. "She's not the first to try. But she's the first to underestimate me." Meanwhile, upstairs, Cassandra tightened her grip. Anyone who questioned her was either bought out or fired. Entire departments were restructured overnight. Longtime employees were replaced by her loyalists. She announced a shareholder meeting in 2 weeks, where she planned to finalize the transfer of Aurelius Global's core assets to her family's holding company. On paper, it looked like streamlining. In reality, it was daylight robbery dressed in corporate language. Naomi wasn't used to this kind of war. She was 27, brilliant but idealistic. Elijah had lived through betrayal before, she hadn't. She worried about being discovered. About losing her job. About the silence in the building at night. One evening, as they reviewed encrypted emails, Naomi's laptop pinged. A message popped up from an unknown internal source. "If you want proof, check Sub-Basement Archive 3. Midnight. Alone." She froze. Elijah looked over her shoulder, his eyes narrowing. "It's bait," Naomi whispered. "Or a gift," Elijah replied. "Either way, we can't ignore it." At midnight, they slipped down to the sub-basement. Few employees even knew it existed anymore, an old archive room buried under layers of renovation. Dust floated like ghosts in the flashlight beam. Rows of old filing cabinets stretched into darkness. In the last row, they found a sealed box labeled Founding Documents, Ward Era. Inside, original partnership agreements. Meeting transcripts from the 1990s. And at the very bottom, a leather-bound folder with Elijah's signature. Inside it was the original company charter with a clause Cassandra had overlooked. Clause 19b, Naomi read aloud, breath-catching. In the event of asset sale without full board consent, original founder retains controlling interest. Elijah stared at the page for a long moment. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It was resolve. "She thinks I'm a ghost," he said quietly. Tomorrow, the ghost fights back. The very next morning, Cassandra made her move. Elijah received a legal notice. He was banned from entering any Aurelius property. Naomi was suddenly called into HR and interrogated about unauthorized access to restricted files. She played dumb, but the pressure was real. Cassandra wasn't just trying to block them, she was sniffing them out. She doubled security. Cameras appeared in places they hadn't been before. And Naomi's system access was suddenly under review. "She's onto us," Naomi whispered that night. "Good," Elijah replied. "That means she's nervous." They knew they couldn't win in secret forever. They needed a public moment, a stage where Cassandra couldn't hide behind press releases and legal jargon. That moment was coming, the annual shareholder meeting, live-streamed globally to investors, employees, and the press. Cassandra planned to stand on that stage, smile, and sign away the soul of Aurelius. Elijah planned to be there first. Together with Naomi, he pieced everything into a presentation so airtight it could topple a regime. Financial flows. Hidden recordings. Original charter clauses. Even video evidence of Cassandra laughing behind closed doors, mocking Elijah and calling shareholders gullible sheep. "We go public there," Naomi said. "We go public everywhere," Elijah corrected. "This isn't revenge. This is exposure." 2 days before the meeting, Naomi received another encrypted message. "If you want to finish this, look at the boardroom feed, April 3, 10:16 a.m. She pulled up the archived security footage. What they saw froze them. Cassandra and 3 senior board members were caught signing a secret agreement, transferring 62% of company assets offshore. Date, April 3, time, 10:16 a.m. The footage had been wiped from official records. But someone inside had saved it, and sent it to them. "We're not the only ones who want her gone," Naomi said. "No," Elijah replied. "We're just the only ones willing to finish the fight." By the night before the shareholder meeting, the atmosphere inside Aurelius Global was electric. Rumors swirled. Employees felt the shift but couldn't name it. Security was on edge. Elijah stood in front of the empty stage inside the grand hall, looking up at the massive Aurelius logo above him. "I gave them this dream," he whispered. "Tomorrow, I take it back." Naomi joined him, exhausted but resolute. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "I was born ready for this," he said. They wanted a war. Tomorrow, they get one. The day of the shareholder meeting arrived like a thunderstorm. Outside Aurelius Global's headquarters, reporters swarmed like bees around a hive. Investors from around the world tuned in via livestream. Employees gathered in break rooms, watching wide-eyed. On stage, Cassandra looked radiant, flawless makeup, power suit, diamond brooch glittering under the lights. She had one in her mind. Today she would stand at the podium, smile for the cameras, and sign away billions. She didn't know Elijah was already in the building. In the control room backstage, Naomi and 2 sympathetic technicians were at their stations. A single USB drive sat plugged in, containing the presentation that would expose everything. Elijah adjusted his tie, straightened his jacket, and stepped onto the main floor from a side entrance. Security stiffened, but the moment they approached, a court order was slapped into their hands. "Filed this morning," Elijah said coolly. "Original founder rights. You can't keep me out anymore." The guards froze. Legal had warned them this might happen. And now, it had. Cassandra's voice echoed through the grand hall as the meeting began. "Good morning, esteemed shareholders," she said with a silky smile. "Today, we embark on a historic new chapter." The doors swung open. Heads turned. Gasps rippled through the room. Elijah walked down the aisle slowly, like a storm entering a quiet valley. Cameras followed. Some shareholders rose to their feet instinctively, recognizing him from old photos, the man who built Aurelius from a basement. "What is he doing here?" Cassandra snapped, momentarily breaking character. "Exercising my rights," Elijah replied evenly. "And exposing yours." He climbed the stage, standing beside her. Cassandra tried to signal security, but they didn't move. Legal couldn't risk removing him on live television. Naomi hit a key backstage. The screens behind them flickered, and suddenly Cassandra's presentation was replaced by Elijah's evidence. A flowchart of shell companies appeared. Wire transfers. Offshore accounts. Secret boardroom footage of Cassandra signing illegal deals. And finally, Clause 19b, the original charter, with Elijah's signature. The room erupted. "This is slander," Cassandra shouted, her voice cracking. "No," Elijah said calmly, stepping to the podium. "This is the truth. You tried to erase me. But you forgot I wrote the foundation you're standing on." He turned to the shareholders, his voice steady but sharp. "For years, this company stood for something bigger than profit. Cassandra wanted to sell that legacy to the highest bidder. But Aurelius is not for sale. Not today. Not ever." A time-stamped clip played, Cassandra laughing with allies behind closed doors. "He's nothing but a relic," she said on the footage. "The board will eat out of my hand. Watch me." The betrayal was undeniable. Cameras zoomed in on Cassandra's face as her composure shattered. Her lawyers scrambled. Shareholders whispered furiously. Some walked out. In that moment, Elijah didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He simply stood there, silent, as the evidence spoke louder than words. "You wanted to know who I really was," he said, looking at Cassandra. "Now the world does." The aftermath was swift. The board announced an emergency session. Cassandra was suspended pending investigation. Her offshore accounts were frozen. Media headlines exploded globally. Founder returns to expose billion-dollar heist. Corporate coup crushed in live meeting. Elijah Ward, the ghost who saved Aurelius. Naomi watched from the sidelines, tears welling. She had risked everything, and it had paid off. Later that night, Elijah stood outside the building, looking up at the Aurelius logo glowing against the sky. Naomi joined him. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Elijah replied. "But this is just the beginning." Inside, employees celebrated quietly. For years, they'd felt unheard. Now, truth had a face, and it wasn't the polished smile of Cassandra, it was the unyielding calm of a man who built something real. As the dust settled, Elijah received a message on his phone. No name. Just one line. "You stopped her. But she wasn't working alone." The camera would slowly zoom in on Elijah's expression, calm, but calculating. The war wasn't over. It had just shifted to a new battlefield. "Looks like we've only opened the first door," he murmured. If you've ever witnessed power being abused, you know this fight doesn't end in one boardroom. This was just the beginning of Elijah's battle to reclaim what he built. Bell subscribe if you want to see how deep this corporate war goes. And tell me below, what would you have done in his place?